Hello, and welcome to Vision Denial and World Watch 2022. My name is Sam, and if those of you who are new here, I have watched every single playoff of 2022. Yes, every single one of them, even that one. Notably, this particular series we were covering the summer of 2022 on our anticipation and preparation for Worlds. And this you have stumbled upon, or you are a regular subscriber and watcher, to the Meet the Teams portion, where I will take a look at every 24 team, their strengths, weaknesses, playstyles, notable quirks, interesting things to look ahead, all in the attempts to at least teach some people who don't watch certain regions what to expect from their teams, or from the teams that are going. That said, there are two caveats to really put forward. First caveat: a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about are data-driven. I will put a link down below to the Google Docs of all of the data I have aggregated all in one nice spot. All of the data comes from the LoL fandom, Wikipedia, and from the goal.gg website, both of which have very different focuses to their data points, and both are necessary for these kinds of videos to work. That said, there's a limitation to some of this data because the LPL doesn't send their data as consistently as the other regions, and this is something you'll find with any particular data point for LoL esports globally. The LPL will still be missing some things regarding plates, drakes at 15 minutes, and heralds. A lot of their early game is not there. That and everything relating to vision. Second thing that I have to point out, a lot of the emerging regions, specifically Oceania, Turkey, Brazil, Latin America, and Japan, their teams will have some inflated stats in their favor. That being in mind, when we're looking at their stats, a lot of them will look good, notably the Chiefs and Detonation Focus Me. So some of the stats for every team has to be taken with a grain of salt of either being maybe stronger than expected or weaker than expected by quite a bit, notably because of this kind of inflation of statistics. When you're studying data, this is the kind of adjustments you need to do. That said, team-based data will look skewed. Individual data for each player's less so, because of the kinds of data points that they keep track of. All of that to say is that a lot of the notes that I've taken are using data points that have been collected that you can all enjoy for free down below, or in the various websites that I mentioned, but taking into account a lot of the personal notes that I use in conjunction with this data to show you what to expect with these teams. Without further ado, let's take a look at this video's team. I don't know. This is a pre-recorded message. Let's take a look. Let's meet DRX. The 4th seed out of LCK became the 17th team to qualify for Worlds after defeating Liv Sandbox out of an upset for the last seed for LCK in the regional qualifiers. We have over here the two coaches, Song, who has been in the coaching sphere since 2013, having been a coach, or 2014, having been a coach for Notch and Blacksword, Empire, the Coup Tigers or Rocks Tigers, Longzhu Gaming, Immortals, TSM, Equifox, CLG. He has been a coach for some time before landing with DRX as of the 2021 season and doing fairly consistently well, with Mowgli also being the assistant coach, having been a jungler for Team Vitality, Afrika Freaks in the challenger scene for T1 before landing a coaching position with DRX for the 2022 season. Both of them have really amped up the idea that DRX is a scrappy, fight-loving team, and you can tell that they really fight around neutral objectives with how heavily they banned Kalista against them consistently. A lot of the strategies that they pulled up involve fighting at any given point, and especially around neutrals, of which two interesting points of fact. They have very high assist to kill ratios. They fight together as a team, but very low kill to death ratio because they get killed often. The fights they choose are very questionable at most points. But something that isn't questionable is that their vision is also fairly consistent. At least when they're trying to set up for fights, they make sure to hold vision control and vision denial in the areas that they're working with before getting to the fights that they want. They do have a passivity issue, though, losing out on multiple neutral objectives and plates when non-necessary. Let's meet the top laner of DRX, Kingen. Kingen had been previously part of KT Rollsters and BDBD Gaming before finally landing in the 2021 season with DRX and has been there since. Kingen is an interesting case over here, as he has the second most champion played across all of the top laners, tied with Fudge. But then you look at his statistics, a lot of them show very low participation in terms of team fighting with the rest of his team, very low gold per minute percentages, a very low KDA, and this becomes a very clear situation of he plays the weak side and side laning pressures very frequently. A lot of the bloody nature of DRX comes from the bottom half of the map, and Kingen has found himself in a situation where he's either being doved on or is playing the side lane so aggressively he is the one that's carrying, and those stats tend to rubber neck against each other in some sense, where in some days he looks incredibly good and in others he looks not so great, but that's because he's playing the roles as he needs to on both occasions. Kingen has some sort of consistency that unfortunately I don't think that they'll be able to play off of very regularly, given that the rosters of top laners going into Worlds, maybe not as stacked as mid and bot lane, is still fairly robust, and he may not be able to get away with playing weak side the way that he usually does. Let's meet the junglers of DRX. I'll be talking about both of them, less Juhan than Pyosik, mostly because of the number of games, and technically on paper, Pyosik has been a much more consistent player, but it is important to talk about Juhan regardless. So, regarding Pyosik, Pyosik has joined DRX from the start of his career, joining in at the start of the 2020 season and joining into the main roster from then on. He's been technically a much more consistent player over time, and you can tell, however, from the stats that he falls below average on all accounts for everything. Kill participation, however, is the only thing he's got going for himself. He participates with his team frequently. And this, however, you would think, oh, he's a proactive, playmaking jungler, right? Well, he was. And something happened around the playoff time and around the later ends of the summer season where all of that proactivity disappears. It is bizarre to say the least, because a lot of the ways that DRX are successful is while ahead early in, as they tend to be able to really navigate the map consistently from gold leads. The issue, however, lies in the fact that with the lack of proactivity that Pyosik comes in, this is where Juhan is a lot more useful. And Juhan, having been part of the Nongshim Red Force and Challenger scene, moving then to the PCS to join the Talons, the PSG Talons, up until the summer season for them, rejoining DRX as a substitute, Juhan saved the day for DRX. Quite literally is the man who allowed them to join Worlds. And while the statistics of Juhan are technically worse, his proactivity enabled DRX to play a much more cohesive style that allows them to win. Now, whether or not they'll choose one over the other in Worlds is mostly up to the way that the scrims go for them. But if you want a proactive DRX, Juhan is your way to go, but otherwise likely expect Pyosik and hope that Pyosik gains proactivity. Let's meet the mid laner of DRX. Zeka may not be familiar to many of you who are watching in the international scene joining DRX for the 2022 season, but if you're a follower of the LPL, you would recognize him as part of Vici Gaming in the 2020 season and of BeryL Gaming in the 2021 season before joining this roster. There's a couple of notable things here regarding Zeka in terms of his peers, because as it is a fairly stacked year for this role. He has fairly average in terms of gold per minute accrued, but a staggeringly 9.23 CS per minute, falling third behind Yaharong, who has no competition in his region, but also falling right behind Chovy. He also has the ties for first place in terms of gold share of his own team compared to others in his particular role, ahead of Chovy. He's got a fairly high kill participation that falls above the average, as well as above average kill share percentages. Mostly to say that a lot of the ways that DRX fight and funnel in their gold and like their proactivity, if it's there, is through Zeka. Zeka is the team fighting machine for this team. And honestly, I would have it no other way. Out of the ways that most of DRX navigate their vision and neutral objective fights, the kinds of champions that Zeka pilots are usually around zone control and ability to manipulate the terrain or really find picks where necessary. And Zeka does that in spades. Expect some really good stuff from him. Let's meet the bot laner of DRX. Deft. Does he really need more introduction than that? This man's been playing since 2013 in Samsung Galaxy. Oh boy. After having been part of Home Life during the 2021 season for the brief period of time, he returns to his jersey in blue with DRX for the 2022 season. Now, Deft in his particular stats may not look impressive, but this is one of those moments in which the stats lie to you. If you look at one of the top 3 champions he plays Senna quite a bit. This will skew some of the numbers, especially his CS per minute, his gold per minute, and as well as his kill share. But his kill participation being above average, his gold share being significantly solid, and the fact that he is an incredibly flexible champion pool, being the highest number of champions played amongst his contemporaries, shows that his tenure and his time as a bot laner honestly really is giving dividends, as he is effective at applying pressure as a team fighter. But he is still, some expectations should be tempered here, as Deft is not of the same kind of form where he could solo many games 1v9. Honestly, if I was to be hyped about Deft, it would be a little bit of a lie. He is consistent for his team and is allowing a lot of pressure for it, but it is not the same Deft of old that inspired a lot of excitement from people. Let's meet the support player of DRX, BeryL. The former world champion here has been part of Damwon Gaming for so long, from 2017 until the end of 2021, when he jumped to DRX in the 2022 season. It was a bit of a surprise for many. However, he has done the best that he has with the situation. Given the kind of playstyle that he is the third most flexible support player amongst those of his role in Worlds. But looking at everything here, and given how team fight heavy and scrappy that DRX is, his KDA speaks volumes. He gets into fights frequently, out of position often, winding up picking and engaging into fights that honestly should not be opted into. And what was a lot of the mad genius of BeryL of old has faded away into questionable BeryL. But his status still remains as somebody who has an eye for how to navigate fights, zone teams off, and when the fights look good, they look great coming out of BeryL. And honestly, I wouldn't count him out completely, but I would be mindful of the fact that he is frequently going to be, what's the good word for this? Throwing himself into the fire as many times as he can. Given everything here, DRX is an interesting team in terms of always wanting to fight, but not necessarily knowing when to fight or when not to fight, right? It is always, oh, opportunity to fight, let's go. And this can lead into some very dicey situations, especially if your top laner is isolated regularly and it leaves your bot laner or mid laner having to do a lot of heavy work. And when you have very large amount of passivity in the early game, then I don't know what to say other than I hope you put Juhan in, quite honestly, or at least that Pyosik has somehow leveled up for Worlds, because as DRX is now, and if they put Pyosik in, and even if they put Juhan in, I'd be hard-pressed to see them convincingly leave Group B out of the play-ins. The Buffaloes and Mad Lions, although not like solidly phenomenal teams in their rights, are going to be more proactive overall. Same with Royal Never Give Up and Isurus. These are teams here that are proactive and will be underestimated easily if DRX does not shape up, at least in some way, shape, or form. At least those are my thoughts from the stats that I've seen over here. I would like to hear what you guys have to think in the comments down below. What are your thoughts on DRX? Do you think it's doomed for them in terms of the play-ins, or do you think they'll come out of the play-ins into groups just fine, only to meet... Who would they meet again? Oh yeah, only to meet Rogue, Top Esports, and GAM, and then have an even worse time. I'd love to hear your thoughts about everything in the comments down below. If you like this kind of stuff, I've got a bunch of whole other videos regarding the other teams that are going to Worlds, all of the other playoffs that I've reviewed, and my thoughts over the last couple of weeks was I was watching them. And if you like this kind of content, leave a like and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it sincerely. And with that, I'll see you next time.